So there's a lot to talk about, and I'm not an expert by any means of volcanology, but one of the main reasons I brought you on the show was there was recently an eruption in Tonga, and I was wondering, does this something that you guys saw coming, or I don't know a lot about it. I just kind of in passing saw it, and I was like, we got to find someone, so I was hoping you could kind of maybe walk us into what was going on there, and just give us your perspective on it as an expert.
So the scale of the eruption that ended up happening in Tonga was not something that we saw coming or forecast per se. There had been some activity in that area that appeared related to submarine volcanoes. But there are a lot of things that are always on our radar as anomalous activity at volcanoes, and not everything ends up manifesting in a large eruption like this. The Tonga region at that time was not very well monitored. I think the closest seismometers were something like 400 kilometers away. So that makes it really difficult to detect any sort of precursory seismicity that you would normally see at a volcano well monitored like Mount St. Helens or Mount Hood or something like that.
Okay. All right. And if I'm not mistaken, isn't Mount St. Helens like the most monitored volcano on the planet?
Mount St. Helens is very well monitored. I don't know if it is the most well monitored. Some of the volcanoes in Italy are pretty well monitored. The volcanoes in Japan are very well monitored. Japan's seismic monitoring across the entire country is phenomenal. Yeah. That's like the gold standard of seismic monitoring, actually.
Really? They just got hit with the tsunami not that long ago again, didn't they?
Yeah. I don't remember how big it ended up being, but there was a tsunami there recently. Yeah.
John will find that. And why, actually, that's a good question. Why do they always, I mean, other than it being an island chain, right? But why are they always getting hammered? Is there a lot of seismic activity that's going on? I'm very ignorant to this.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So there's a subducting, the Pacific Ocean is subducting underneath the island chain of Japan, and that's what ultimately gives rise to the volcanoes and that the island of Japan itself. But all the slip on that subduction zone, all those earthquakes that happen underwater, under the ocean, that displaces a large amount of water, and that's what gives rise to those tsunamis.
Not a good place to live at all. They're always getting hammered by earthquakes, and so you're paying attention to. There's a lot of factors. I'm assuming. I think we're getting a little bit too. A lot of factors.
So everything that I can find is on the 16th of March. There was a 7.4 magnitude earthquake off the coast of Fukushima, 60 kilometers down. Around midnight, and 4 people died and about 100 were injured, and there was a level 2 tsunami warning issued, but I can't find anything about like an actual tsunami being reported.
Okay. So I made it up. Damn it. So Jay, I think we're getting a little I'm excited, so I'm getting a little bit too ahead. I think a good place to start. Let's just redo this, right? Walk us through what seismology is. And so, but before you do that, tell the people how you got interested in geology, and kind of a little bit of background about yourself, and then let us know what seismology is, because there's a lot of people I feel like that don't know what seismology is, and I don't even know if I have the best understanding of it.
Yeah. So I guess just background on myself and how I got into geology. I grew up in Dallas, Texas, in the suburbs, well, not the suburbs, actually, in the city. And very urban environment. And, my whole upbringing, at least in terms of education, was all like, business oriented. Like all the adults I knew were all in like business and accounting and everything like that. But I always loved being outdoors, and my extended family all lived in the country, and that exposed me to a lot of beautiful places across the country. And when I got to college, I had no idea that you could study something like geology, that you could get a degree in geology. And when I realized that, when I got to college, I was like, oh, like I'm in. Like I wasn't thinking about like jobs or anything. I was just like, this is what I want to do in college. And then after a couple of years of that, then I started thinking like, all right, well, how am I what am I actually going to do with this degree? Because the best way to get a job with a geology major out of college is to go work for an oil industry. And I didn't really want to do that. So that, the other options are, working in disaster relief. So I decided that route was of more interest to me. And there was a graduate school program at Michigan Technological University at the time that combined Peace Corps service with with a master's in geology. So I ended up joining that program, and I ended up living in Indonesia for 2 years, working at a small volcano observatory at a volcano in Indonesia as a part of my master's, and then ended up getting this job at the U.S. Geological Survey's Volcano Disaster Assistance Program, which is like the international wing of the USGS, that it's like a liaison between domestic observatories and foreign observatories. And then, and then my specific role with VDAP is as a seismologist, a volcano seismologist. So seismology is the study of ground vibrations, most basically. So normally, you hear of earthquakes happening, and that's basically just rock breaking under the ground or two plates moving against each other. And if the earthquake's large enough, those vibrations can be felt across, across the globe. And at volcanoes, the same process happens on a little bit smaller scale. There's rock breaking as magma moves from the mantle up to the surface. And then just as magma moves through those conduits after the rock is actually broken, that produces vibrations as well. And monitoring all that seismicity is it's the primary way that we monitor volcanoes and assess their level of activity and how close they are to erupting.
Okay. And from the geology classes I took way back in the day, I would always assume, so you're monitoring the vibrations of rock, and I'm going back in time. I'm thinking of lava flowing, pooling, and then creating pressure with gases. And then when the pressure gets too much, pop goes the weasel. Correct? Like that's the basic, very elementary understanding of the eruption that I have. How far?
Yeah,
am I spot on?
Yeah, that's a pretty good. That's a pretty good understanding of what's happening. A lot of different variables come into play, and a lot of different scenarios could play out. But that's that's a pretty good first, interpretation or a first assumption of what is happening underneath a volcano.
Shout out to Geology 101. Still got it.
Yeah.
There's different types of eruption. There's a viscous eruption, and that's gonna. Oh man, I'm totally bullshitting right now. That's gonna have lava, and then there's a gaseous one, and that could spew out poisonous gases. Am I off? Am I on? I'm on the green here.
Yeah, I think you're on the green. So major contributing factors towards what type of eruption ends up happening and how big that eruption is how much magma is coming up towards the surface, and what's the gas content of that magma, and how much pressure is built up in that system. And some volcanoes, depending on the chemistry of the magma and how easily gas is able to get out, it might, result in a very, if a lot of gas is able to get out, and if there isn't a lot of gas in there in the first place, then it will come out very viscous and might just produce lava flows. But if there's a high amount of gas pressure and the gas isn't able to escape, it's building up a lot of pressure, and then is able to produce a much more explosive eruption.